Never again to martial law! Never again! Never again! Never again to martial law! Never again! Never again! Never again to martial law! Never again! Never again! Never again to martial law! Marcos Hitler! Dictador fascista! Marcos Hitler! Dictador fascista! Marcos Hitler! Dictador fascista! Marcos Hitler! Dictador fascista! Never again! Never again! Never again to martial law! Never again! Never again! Never again to martial law! Not another nickel! Not another dime! No more money for Marcos' crime! Not another nickel! Not another dime! No more money for Marcos' crime! Wabatagot! 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 Marcos Hitler walang pinag-iba! Parehong duda! Dictador fascista! 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 Parehong duda! Dictador fascista! Marcos Hitler walang pinag-iba! 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 Parehong duda! Dictador fascista!
Shut the fuck. Are you serious? That is disgusting.
Never again! Never again! Never again to martial law! Never again! Never again!
That is so fucked up.
Never again! Never again!
Never
again to martial law! Never again! Never again!
Never again to martial law!
Never again! Never again!
Never again to martial law!
Never again! Never again!
Never again to martial law!
Never again! Never again!
Never again to martial law!
Never again! Never again!
Never again to martial law!
Never again! Never again!
Never again to martial law!
Never again! Never again!
Never again to martial law!
Not another nickel! Never again!
Never again to martial law!
Not another nickel! Not another dime!
No more money for Marcos' crime!
Not another nickel! Not another dime!
No more money for Marcos' crime!
Shameless! Angel society!
Shameless! Shameless! Angel society!
Shameless! Shameless!
Shameless society!
Walang hiya! Walang hiya! Angel society!
Walang hiya! Walang hiya! Angel society!
Shameless! Shameless!
Angel society!
Walang hiya! Walang hiya!
Angel society!
Shameless! Shameless!
Angel society!
Never again! Never again!
Shameless! Shame on you! Shame on you! Shame on you! Shame on you! You have no
Angel society!
the Asian Society for giving the fascist son of a dictator, Ferdinand Marcos Jr. a platform to speak. He's been here all week, talking at the UN, talking down on Wall Street, and it is not okay. We are the specters. We are the representatives of the people tortured, murdered, raped during martial law in the Philippines.
Shame on you! Shame on you!
We are here to set the record straight, to no longer let the Marcoses revise history, to no longer let the Marcoses tell lies about what happened to the Philippines, what they've done to the Filipino people. They are responsible for the disappearance of over 3,000 people, the deaths of over 3,000 people, the torture of 30,000 people, the rape of 30,000 people, and the and the arrest of 70,000 people.
No more money for Marcos crime!
We will not stand by while President Marcos arrives in New York to sell off the Philippines, to sell the Filipino people down the river for his profit, for his family's profit, while all the stolen wealth from the Filipino people stays in the Marcos family's coffers. We will not allow it. The Marcos family must be deplatformed. There is no place in this city for fascist dictators. There is no place in this country for our president, for the president who is only going to do more damage to his people. We've seen our Kasama's already thrown out of the Asian Society violently for peacefully protesting. The president. The Asian Society says they don't shy away from the hard questions in this world. I have a hard question for Kevin Rudd, President and CEO of the Asian Society. If you give a platform to fascists, what does that make you? If you have a theater full of people listening to one fascist speak, what do you have? You have a fucking theater full of fascists.
That's right.
We are calling for the ICC to continue its investigation into former President Rodrigo Duterte, into the continued murder and attack of the indigenous people of the Philippines, of activists, of teachers. We have a short program here for you today so that you can all learn, so that Park Avenue can hear, so that the Asian Society know what they've allowed into their building.
No more money for Marcos crime! No more money for Marcos crime!
Our first speaker today is speaking on behalf of Anak Bayan USA. Anak Bayan USA. Please give it up for Nico.
Militant greetings. My name is Nico, and I am here on behalf of Anak Bayan USA, an overseas movement of youth and student organizations fighting for national democracy with a socialist perspective in the Philippines. It is shameful that in the same week that we are commemorating 50 years since Ferdinand Marcos Sr. enacted martial law, his son, Bongbong Marcos Jr., is being wined, dined, and invited as a guest of honor by politicians and museums. It is true that I was not alive to see and experience martial law for myself, but it is also true that since then, martial law survivors have worked tirelessly to share their stories so that we, as youth, remember and understand not only the stark period, but also the legacy of those who fought back. I have heard from elders who were detained and tortured. I have heard from elders who were youth activists with the Student Christian Movement, and with the Revolutionary Youth Organization, Kabataan Makabayan. I have heard from those whose classmates were murdered under martial law, and for those who use every opportunity to arouse, organize, and mobilize their peers until Marcos Sr.'s ouster. Marcos Jr. carries the legacy of his father's reign of terror, but we too are carrying a legacy of resistance. This is what it means to be mga anak ng bayan, the children of the Filipino people, and what an honor it is to carry this struggle forward. It is not enough for us to simply condemn Marcos and Marcos alone. We must root out the systems of imperialism, feudalism, and bureaucrat capitalism that continue to plague the Filipino people and which allowed Marcos to rise to power again. We must reject the reactionary culture that welcomes fascists to speak at museums and other cultural institutions. The culture that enabled Marcos to be here today cannot be reformed. We must embrace a new revolutionary culture, one that does not serve the reactionary anti-people desires of the rich and powerful, but instead serves the interests, the art, the progressive ideas, and aspiration of the Filipino people.
Yes!
Yeah, you close that door.
Our task as youth today is clear. We will carry out the legacy and the struggle of those who came before us. We will arouse and mobilize the masses towards achieving socialism and national democracy. We will ensure that there is never again another Marcos, another bureaucrat capitalist, another puppet of U.S. imperialism and power. We will win!
Never again to martial law! Never again! Never again! Never again to martial law!
Lumalakas, lumalawak!
Lumalabas! Ang bayan!
Thank you, Nico. As we know, EDSA, to oust the first Marcos, was led by the youth and students, and it continues to be led by the youth and students today. Our next speakers, we're going to hear from the folks who were just inside Asian society, who were just thrown out violently. Jackie.
Never forget, never again to martial law!
Never again to martial law!
I am representing our very brave team that went inside today to block the entrance of attendees from going inside this shameless event to listen to fascist President Marcos Jr. Please give a round of applause and make some noise for our kasamas that took that risk inside. Our goal was to make sure that Marcos feels from outside and inside and everywhere that he's been here in New York that we are watching, that we are there. That we are relentless in our mission to ensure that he hears our message. Some of the people who taunted us in there said, "Have you even been to the Philippines before?" Yes, a lot of us have. A lot of us are from there. A lot of us still have family there. Our hearts are in the Philippines, and that is why we took this risk. For those who didn't see us, we locked arms together in front of the door leading to the auditorium where Marcos is speaking right now. And we chanted, never forget, never again to martial law, not another nickel, not another dime, no more money for Marcos' crimes. Marcos, Hitler, dictador, fascista, all of these true statements. And I heard a bystander say, you know what they're saying is true. And we wanted to make 3 points clear. It is the 50th anniversary of the declaration of martial law that claimed the lives of thousands of people whose lives you do not value at all. We represent the spirits and the ghosts of our fallen comrades and family. We are here to haunt the Marcos dynasty and make them remember what they still claim to forget. That's right! The second thing is to tell everybody that Marcos is a puppet of U.S. imperialism. A puppet of Chinese imperialism. No interest of the Filipino people in mind. They're willing to sell off the Philippines and the Filipino people to the highest bidder. Shame on them. Mostly trans people, mostly queer people whose bodies are already on the line in this horrible system. They enable the fascist Marcos regime, and it is caught on video that they don't care who is fighting back for the Filipino people. They don't care. They will tear us apart. They will hurt us. They will do anything to silence us, but we will keep fighting back. And we will keep fighting no matter what. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Jackie raises a very important point that the people most vulnerable in Filipino society are the ones that are most at risk as Marcos continues his sorry everybody. As Marcos continues this fascist regime. Our next speaker to speak on behalf of Gabriela USA, a militant women's organization here in Angelica.
Everyone inside, are you embarrassed? Do you have any shame? Do you know the platform that you are giving? Do you know that you are protecting a fascist? How do you sleep at night? How do you sleep with all that shame? Shame on you! Shame on Marcos! Shame! My name is Angelica Lim and I'm with Gabriela USA. And as we stand here today, remember our faces, the echoes of the lives that were taken under martial law. You do not care about the Filipino people. You stand in there today thinking you are representing Filipino women, Filipino families, but you are doing the exact opposite. You are protecting a fascist legacy. You are revising history, and you are repeating fascism for a legacy that does nothing for our people. While Marcos was here, what he did was sell off the Philippines piece by piece, people by people. He sold every single part of the Philippines as a CEO of the Philippines. He met with Biden to reaffirm military Shameless assholes, yes. When Biden and Marcos sat together, they affirmed a military agreement that has had deep impact on the Filipino people, on Filipino women and their families. The VFA and EDCA are examples of these, where women in the Philippines have been raped, have been killed under military agreements where the U.S. occupies the Philippines. Have you no shame? Also, with Marcos' economic budget, we know that Filipino women have the deepest impact. The labor export policy is alive and well under Marcos as he continues to see the Filipino people as the biggest resource. He is selling our people. Have you no shame? Congress also said the most vulnerable are represented out here. That also means the most vulnerable are representing the needs of the people. Under state repression, what will happen is that activists and organizers will be disappeared, will be killed. And today you showed us that you will violently disperse human rights defenders, activists, organizers fighting for the Filipino people. Have you no shame? Gabriela USA rejects the U.S. Marcos regime. We reject everything you are about. We are here to stand against you and haunt you till your last day. Shame on you. Shame on you.
Shame on you, Asian society.
Shame on you, Asian society. We will be here every day to remind you that we do not agree with the cooperation between the U.S. and Marcos, and we believe shame on you. Jump the VFA. U.S. troops out of the Philippines now. Always, always defend Filipino women and their families. Thank you.
Thank you, Angelica. All I can think is every time that door opens and they close it so hastily, it's because they know we're right. They know that what they are doing is wrong. They know that having a fascist dictator in their basement speaking to people here in the city is the wrong thing to do. They know that we are right, and that's why they are so scared of the people. Our next speaker is from Bayan, USA. We have Berna.
Testing. Marcos Hitler, walang pinag-iba.
Parehong junta, diktador fascista.
Marcos Hitler, walang pinag-iba.
Parehong junta, diktador fascista.
Mga kasama, mga kapatid, can we have a moment of silence to remember why we are here? For the victims, the countless victims of martial law. Those who died, those who were tortured, have yet to see justice. Marcos Hitler, walang pinag-iba!
Parehong junta, diktador fascista.
70,000 arrested! 35,000 tortured! 33,200 killed summarily! 1,000 disappeared! Reported by Amnesty International! And these are conservative numbers, because these do not count the thousands and thousands of peasants, of farmers, of indigenous, of Bangsamoro, who were summarily killed by way of genocide by the Philippine military under martial law. Because martial law was about clearing out the land. Martial law was about clearing out the rural communities off their land, displacing them to open up the Philippines for foreign investment, for land grabbing by foreign corporations and foreign investors. That's why, under martial law, there were so much more worse human rights violations in the countryside. The rural poor have continued to bear brunt of continuous martial law because of their displacement, because of their landlessness at the hands of the AFP, of the armed forces of the Philippines. And every administration, up until this administration, has continued an undeclared martial law policy that began on September 21, 1972. For the past 50 years, the peasants are dying! The farmers are dying! The Luban is dying! The ignorants are dying! The Bangsamoro continue to die at the hands of the AFP, at the hands of this reactionary ruling regime, with our taxpayers' support. Nagasama, the struggle in the countryside continues. With the Civil War, we continue to stand with those who are fighting for land reform, for national industrialization, so that the Philippines can have real sustainable development and sovereignty. If you don't die at the hands of the military, you will die because of poverty and hunger in the Philippines. As long as those victims are just as much victims as those who died by the hands of the military. Therefore, we are not here to disturb. We are here to let you know that there is a historical and continuing struggle in the Philippines. That people are resisting this fascist dictatorship that you are hosting. And we will continue for as long as the situation in the Philippines does not change, as long as the land is still seized from the people, grabbed by the foreigners, grabbed by the landlords. We will continue to be here, whether it's the Asian Society or anywhere else in the U.S. Today, we mark 1 week of sustained actions. Here in New York City. We saw this motherfucker when he got here last Sunday in New York. We have not let him have any peace. We also had actions across the U.S. in Honolulu, in Los Angeles, in San Francisco, in Seattle, in Texas, in Chicago, in Washington, D.C., and here in New York. And we are growing. We are growing. Our movement is growing here in the U.S. If you think just because we are here in the U.S. that we do not care what is happening in the Philippines, you are wrong. You are wrong. We care more than you what's happening in the Philippines, because we care for the poor. Do you care for the poor? No! We are more patriotic than you because we care for the poor, who are the majority in the Philippines. Do you care for the majority? No! And don't tell us that we don't care. Don't tell us that we're not Filipino because we are more patriotic than you. Moki Boga! Maraming salamat. Thank you. Maki Baba! Wag matakot! Wag matakot! Maki Baba!
Thank you, Berna. So many of us are here because we are the children of people that were exploited under the labor export policy, because we are the grandchildren of people who left the Philippines because there was no prospect for their future, because they needed education, because they needed to be able to feed themselves and feed their families. And we are here Because we are Filipino, because we love the Filipino people, because we want justice for the Filipino people. We want accountability for the human rights violations. We want accountability from the U.S. government. We want to end funding to the Filipino government for the human rights violations. To hear directly from a martial law survivor, we're going to have Vina read a poem by a martial law survivor. That was not a great way to frame that. It's a poem by a martial law survivor. Vina.
Salamat, Zach. My name is Vina Orden. I'm a writer and an editor. I have a message for the son of a dictator who's now president and vows to continue his father's work. The martial law generation and their children are still out here on the streets. Hindi namin malilimutan, hindi kami titigil sa pagsasalita ng katotohanan. And to those who publicly profess to be for democracy and human rights, but who are taking meetings with the son of a dictator, the question is not about what really happened during martial law and the Marcos dictatorship, the first Marcos dictatorship, because those crimes against humanity are already well documented. The real question is, how will you hold this son of a dictator accountable? Will you ask him to denounce his father's and the vice president's father's legacies? Will you ask him to free all political prisoners, including Senator Leila de Lima and Adora Faye de Vera, a martial law victim who endured rape, torture, and forced abortion when she was detained twice in her 20s and who has been arrested again at 66 years old with chronic asthma and anemia for her quote-unquote ties to communists? We will not forget martial law for families who still grieve for their loss of their loved ones today. In that spirit, I dedicate this reading to Bonnie Ilagan, I dedicate this reading to Bonnie Ilagan, whose sister Rizalina was among the Southern Tagalog 10 who were disappeared in 1977. And to Pete Lacaba, whose brother and fellow poet and activist Eman Lacaba was killed in 1976 by the Philippine Constabulary in Davao del Norte when he was 27 years old. This poem is called Ang Mandirigma sa Sambayanan, The People's Warrior by Eman Lacaba. Ang mandirigma sa sambayanan ay isang atleta, umaakyat sa bundok hindi dahil sa iyon ay naroon, kundi dahil sa naroon ang masa. The people's warrior is an athlete, a mountain climber, not because the mountain is there, but because the masses are there. Siya ay isang sirkero. Pinapanimbang ang sarili sa mga buwal ng kahoy na tulay sa mga ilog, ang mga tabunghalang talon ng tiyak na kamatayan. He is an acrobat, balancing himself on fallen trunks, shame! That bridge rivers and monstrous waterfalls of certain death like a tightrope dancer. Katulad ng isang aktor sa tanghalan ng revolusyon, isang matapat na aktor, sapagkat ang masa ay pinakamahusay na tagahatol, nakakabasa ang mga mukha at katawan at nakababatid kung ikaw ay nagsasabi ng katotohanan o basta nagbubulaan. The people's warrior is an actor on the stage of revolution. An actor of sincerity, for the masses are the best critics. They can read faces and bodies and know when you speak the truth, or are just hamming. Ang mandirigma ng sambayanan ay isa ring komedyante. Ipinamamana sa masa ang kabaliguan, ang kabalintulaan ng kanilang kalagayan, ang tunggaliyaang namamagitan sa inaalipin, ngunit nagpapatulo ng pawis at sa nagaharing walang kapatakmang pawis mula sa kanyang dekutsyong kotse at opisina at mamol na inidoro. The people's warrior is, oh yes, a comedian, making the masses see paradoxes, the irony of their condition, the contradiction between he who is ruled and sweats from toil and he who rules without a sweat from his cushioned car and office and marble toilet seat. Ang masa'y pinapasisigla ng mandirigma sa samanbayanan upang mapalugod na sumuong sa digma, ngunit taglay ang lahat ng katatagan. Siya'y nakapapatawa upang mapalapit sa kanya ang pululit. I should make the Tagalog poet read this poem. Sa kanyang kalooban ng masa, sa kabilang sa kanila, at nauukol sa kanila, the people's warrior inspires the masses to march forward to battle cheerfully, but with all determination. He clowns to make the masses feel at home with him, for he is one of them and belongs to them. Sa unang pagkakatao ay nasandatahan, ngunit di mapagsamantala siyang madirigma ng sambayanan. Armed at the first encounter, but never mistake him for a tyrant, the people's warrior. Thank you.
Marcos Hitler, walang pinagiba! Parehong duda, diktator fascista! Marcos Hitler, walang pinagiba! Parehong duda, diktator fascista!
We've just heard that President Marcos is being introduced right now. Apparently he was a little bit delayed in his speech. It sounds like the auditorium is not full. They were not able to fill all the seats. Why not? Why can't you fill the seats for a fascist dictator? That's weird. To remind folks of why we're here, we are out here protesting Philippine President Marcos speaking today at the Asia Society with Kevin Rudd, CEO and President of the Asia Society. We are here today to mark the 50th anniversary of the declaration of martial law by Marcos's father, Ferdinand Marcos, who killed over 3,000 people, who tortured 30,000, and who illegally detained 70,000. We are here calling for President Marcos to be deplatformed by the UN, by Asia Society, and by the US. He should not be given a platform to speak on behalf of the Filipino people, and on a global stage, while his family continues to deny people their rights, to deny people accountability for the violence they've inflicted on the Filipino people.
Marcos Hitler, walang pinagiba! Parehong duda, diktator fascista!
Earlier this week, President Biden met with President Marcos. Afterwards, President Biden tweeted that our nation's relationship is rooted in democracy, common history, people-to-people ties, including millions of Filipino Americans who enrich our nation. Does democracy look like rampant human violations? Does democracy look like illegal detention? Does democracy look like the shutdown of news organizations and progressive organizations? Our common history is one of colonialism, is one of imperialism. The Philippines has been sorry everybody. The Philippines has been exploited by the US for generations, for their natural resources, for their position in Asia as a foothold in the area against China.
Marcos Hitler, walang pinagiba! Parehong duda, diktator fascista!
There's a piece of legislation in front of Congress right now called the Philippine Human Rights Act, or the PHRA. It would cut military funding to the PNP, to the Philippine National Police, and the armed forces of the Philippines until there is accountability and justice for the victims of human rights violations in the Philippines. Our next speaker comes from ICHRP USA, the International Committee for Human Rights in the Philippines. We have Gord.
Hello. US calls on the American people to stand in solidarity with the Filipino people, to stand together and reject US support for Marcos. We here in the States pride our country as a bastion of democracy and freedom around the world. President Biden had a summit on democracy in which he invited the Philippines to the former President Duterte, whose drug war killed 30,000, who arrested leagues of activists fighting for social justice. But we here in the U.S. know that our country is a bastion of democracy, yet we also have our history of arresting our civil rights leaders. I'm sure every high school student knows that they read MLK Jr.'s letter from a Birmingham jail. Today, Marcos is at the head of the Philippine state, and that is the Philippine state that is arresting, harassing, red tagging activists fighting for land reform, for LGBT rights, for better wages, for the environment. All of us here in the States also know these struggles because we have one shared struggle. We have a global struggle against injustice. And that is why this is history repeating again. The first Marcos back in the 70s declared martial law, and he was America's boy. The day after he declared martial law, September 21st, 1972, the American business community applauded because they saw it as a grand opportunity to make more money in the Philippines. And that is why Ferdinand Marcos Jr. is here today, inside the Asia Society, to sell off the Philippines to the highest bidder here in the States. Shame! And that is why he is so welcomed here, because the people in this big city are welcoming him because they know that they'll make lots of money in the Philippines, opening huge pits in the jungles and mountains of the Philippines, destroying indigenous communities, bombing peasant communities to make room for more malls and junk factories. US again is calling on the American people to stand together because this is a shared struggle. Because we share this world together. When we destroy the environment in the Philippines, it comes back to bite us here. People in New York have seen global warming. You've seen the metro flooding. Already I was in the Philippines this summer in a coastal village, and the water was up to my knees due to global warming and the destruction of the environment. And Asia Society and President Biden, the US government, and the UN is condoning this by allowing Marcos to speak here. So we call again, reject US support for Marcos. Thank you. Long live international solidarity.
Long live
international solidarity. Maki baka! Wag matakot!
Maki baka!
Ang tao, ang bayan,
Ngayon ay lumalaban!
ngayon ay lumalaban.
Ang tao, ang bayan!
Ang tao, ang bayan,
Ngayon ay lumalaban!
ngayon ay lumalaban.
Ang tao, ang bayan!
Marcos, Hitler, diktador fascista.
Pareho, Duda, diktador fascista!
Told you. Marcos, Hitler, walang pinagiba.
Pareho, Duda, diktador fascista!
Marcos, Hitler, walang pinagiba.
Pareho, Duda, diktador fascista!
Makipaka,
Huwag matakot!
wag matakot.
Maki baka!
Makipaka,
Huwag matakot!
wag matakot.
Maki baka!
Thank you, everybody. Keep the energy up. I know we're exhausted. Our next speaker comes from U.S. Filipinos for Good Governance. We have Eric Lachica.
Good afternoon. Magandang hapon to all. Maraming salamat to our dear friends sa Malaya Movement and our allies. I'm here on behalf of the U.S. Filipinos for Good Governance. We are here to say that we'd like to say that we'd like to thank President Biden. Yesterday, he made it very clear, if you notice, that he wanted to talk about human rights. If you also listen very closely, he was going to have a private meeting on human rights. And we want to know whether, dear President, has asked Bongbong Marcos whether he would release our dear friend, Philippine Senator Laila de Lima, who has been persecuted, who has been in jail for almost 6 years. If President Marcos Jr. would like to redeem the name of his family, he has to show that he will uphold the law as he promised our American friends. We must demand from our dear American president, as he promised when he was running for president, that he would live up to the ideals of the American people. President Biden, we don't want, right, to become an enabler like President Reagan when his Marcos Sr. was a dictator. Are we going to allow that?
No!
Are we going to allow President Biden to be an enabler?
No!
All right, so we are, on behalf of the U.S. Filipinos for Good Governance, our policy is we're giving President Marcos Jr. a benefit of a doubt. If he doesn't deliver on his promises, recall, he promised to put 20 pesos for a kilo of rice. Can he deliver on that?
No!
We will know by Christmas if he's really serious to the Filipino people, if he can deliver his campaign promise. Just like President Biden, we will ask him to follow through. And hopefully we will know in a few days whether President Biden will ask BBM or Bongbong Marcos whether he will call for the release of Senator Laila de Lima on bail. Free Laila de Lima! To our American friends, can you believe that? The former Secretary of Justice of the Philippines has been in jail for almost 6 years under the previous Duterte administration. Now, if Marcos Jr. would like to be to redeem his family name, what will he have to do? Very simple, and I'm pretty sure that President Biden raised this issue yesterday. Let's see, will Bongbong Marcos, as he promised President Biden yesterday, I'm a partner with the United States, we are friends, and he will not be successful without the support of the American people and the American government. He made it very clear yesterday, Bongbong Marcos. So I'd like to say that we are expecting a lot. I know that the President Marcos Jr. will be bragging a lot that he's a good friend now of President Biden. So sa ating mga Pilipino who are on this listening live stream, we will give a benefit of the doubt to President Bongbong Marcos Jr. He has the chance to read the name, to save the name of his family, as his older sister, Senator Amy Marcos, who is the Foreign Affairs Chairman of the Philippine Senate. Okay. So we don't want them to continue their name. Now, I know many people were sending on Facebook, email that why was the United General Assembly 98% empty when Bongbong Marcos gave a speech? By the way, to give credit where credit's due, Marcos Jr. gave a damn good speech. All right? Yeah, written by who? So we will give, at least from our end, our organization, we will give the benefit of the doubt to President Marcos. He has appointed very, very good cabinet members. Many of them, from the college where I went to in high school. So I'd like to say that we will be looking forward to the visit of Senator Amy Marcos on Monday in Washington, D.C., who will be paying a a lot of visits or meetings with her counterparts in the U.S. Senate. And we'd like, as Amy Marcos said, before the elections in May, the Marcos family wants to redeem their name, good name. Hopefully next time that Marcos Jr. shows up, he can brag. He upheld Philippine law, and then he can brag that he released Senator Laila de Lima. Kaya ba natin yon? Can we persuade Marcos Jr. to release Senator Laila de Lima, who has been persecuted by the previous president? Kaya ba natin?
Free all political prisoners!
Free all political prisoners, right? Okay. I'd just like to end on a personal note, if I'll be permitted. You know, I'll be turning 70 next month. Yes, and more than 70% of our Filipino seniors here in America would like to retire in the Philippines. To our kababayan here this afternoon who have been listening, marami kaming gustong bumalik sa Pilipinas. Ang problema lang, ang pangalan ng Pilipinas ay masama. Gaya po sa United Nations Assembly kahapon or the day before. Konti lang na ating very few people attended this very good speech of BBM. So I'd like to show you that this can be a win-win situation. It's up to President Biden to follow through on his commitments to the American people. It's up to Marcos Jr. to uphold the law and release Laila de Lima on bail. Alam niyo naman, over the past 10 years to our Filipino listeners, maraming napardon ng mga former presidents who were found guilty of corruption. The legal counsel of Bongbong Marcos, sino yon? Anybody? Former Defense Secretary or Minister of Defense, Ponce Enrile. Wasn't he convicted of corruption? Wasn't he in jail? Okay, so now he's the senior legal counsel of Marcos Jr. Oh, ngayon, Marcos, if Enrile convicted of plunder, is his legal counsel, bakit hindi si Laila de Lima? Kung magaling kung smart si Marcos Jr. Anyway, I want to leave it on that thought. Okay? So I'd like to say, it's up to you, Marcos Jr., to save your family's name. Maraming salamat to you all.
Parehong duda, diktator, basista. Marcos Hitler, walang pinagiba. Parehong duda, diktator, basista. Not another nickel, not another dime. No more money for Marcos crimes.
Demokrasya!
Hindi diktadura.
Hindi diktadura!
Demokrasya.
Demokrasya!
Hindi diktadura.
Hindi diktadura!
Demokrasya.
Our next speaker is speaking on behalf of Malaya, New York, Malaya, USA. We have Gina Apostol.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here, and I just want to say this is a day where Asia society is going to go down in infamy. And this is the day that Joseph Biden is going to go down in infamy. This is the day that this United States government, that on the day Marcos Jr. was supposedly elected, but it was still being contested, the Secretary of State Blinken already embraced and acknowledged that election. Blinken is going to go down in history too, in infamy. Shame. I'm a Filipino novelist. I have been writing about the history of the Philippines for a very long time. I remember the day when martial law was declared. I was 8. I was watching Sleeping Beauty. And that's what happened to this country. It went to sleep for the next 14 years. Attacked by the brambles of violence, fraud, cheating, dictatorship. Our Constitution was suspended. The Constitutional Convention went down in chaos because it was revealed by someone from my goddamn hometown that the delegates had been bribed by the Marcos regime. September 23 today is when martial law was declared. Martial law was signed September 21. I have been writing for a very long time of the history of the Philippines, and Joseph Biden will regret the day when he said we share a common history without recognizing what that common history is. The common history is genocide. The genocide of the Filipinos in the Philippine-American War from 1899 to 1913. More than 1 million people dead. More than all towns burned by American generals. An American general who just raised northern Luzon. The Americans who at the Balangiga massacre when 40 Americans were killed. What did Americans do in 1901 at that massacre? Where Filipinos like us were resisting the fascists. What did they do? 38 Americans killed, 3,000 Filipinos in Samar dead, 30,000 tortured, farms raised. It is a history of violence that is the common history of the Philippines and America. Fuck that shit when Biden says that is our common history. I voted for Biden. And I am ashamed. I am ashamed of that country, at this country in which I live, this country in which I am a citizen, that we have a president who has shamelessly lied about the history in that statement. And to say that we share this democracy. What is Biden telling the American people? Lies! The American democracy is a lie, and it's based on fascism and violence. If that's the kind of if the Marcos concept of democracy is what Biden thinks America shares. Shame on Biden. Shame on Blinken. Shame on Asian society. And we know very well the geopolitical situation that we have here. We know very well that when the Marcosists left the country, that was the time when the military bases were kicked out. The U.S. military bases were kicked out of the Philippines, 1991. And we know what the military state that is America wants. They want that dominance in Asia. Fuck you, Asia society, that is supporting that geopolitical violence that's continuing upon the Philippines. I'm ashamed of this country, the United States, in which I live. I'm ashamed of New York. I'm ashamed that we remain here in this country of lies, where we say we are democratic, when we say we are for democratic principles, and we absolutely embrace this symbol, scion, and supporter, and benefiter of violence and anti-democratic rule. I grew up with the people who died under the Marcos regime. I still cry for them. I still cry for my friends. I still cry for Leandro Alejandro. I still cry for all of those people whose names we cannot know and will not, and for many of us whose names we cannot share. It is a travesty. It is a travesty what's happening today at Asia Society because it is symbolic of a long history of forgetting, deliberate forgetting by the American people of what they have done in the so-called common history of the Philippines and America. So I do not give Bongbong Marcos the benefit of the doubt. The mere fact that his lawyer is Juan Ponce Enrique tells me of his lack of faith, tells us of his corruption. The mere fact that the person who becomes in charge of Congress is his goddamn son, a goddamn 20-whatever-year-old, tells us that he's going to continue the reign of corruption, nepotism. And the fact that he's finally here in the United States when he could not come to the United States all of these years, the first time he's in the United States is now because he's president. He couldn't come before because he's a criminal. He was not allowed into this country.
Uphold the contempt order!
And no, he's a criminal, was allowed into New York until today because through lies, historical lies about his father's regime, he moved that election with the payment of the trolls, the internet disinformation, for which he still has, for which Maria Ressa, who has absolutely investigated the use of the trolls and disinformation in that election, she remained under indictment, under Marcos's Philippines. I do not give him the benefit of the doubt.
That's right.
What I will do is continue to tell the world about the lies, about the violence, and about the historical connection that the United States has with the Philippines, which is a connection of genocide, horror, trauma, and absolute travesty. It's a historical crime that has not yet been addressed. Today is a day that Asia Society is going to go down in infamy. Today is the day. This week is the week that Joe Biden has shown his colors, and he too will go down. In 1981, I still remember when George H.W. Bush, Vice President of the United States, said to Ferdinand Marcos, "I toast your adherence to democratic principles and democratic processes." He too, George Bush too, learned to regret his comments, because what happened 5 years later? Marcos went down. There was a people power rebellion. We resisted, and it was a resistance that came from decades and decades of fighting, and we will continue to fight. Marcos, dictator, Hitler, tuta. Down with Marcos, down with what Biden said about the common history. Let's remember what that common history is, and let America know that we know, and we will continue to fight and make clear what is the truth of democracy. That is what we are today. Thank you.
Never again to martial law! Never again! Never again! Never again to martial law! Never again! Never again! Never again to martial law! Never again to martial law! Parehong tuta, diktador fascista! Walang pinakiba! Parehong tuta, diktador fascista!
We've been out in the streets all week. We met Marcos when he arrived in Newark, New Jersey, outside the New Jersey Performing Arts Center. We met him outside Wall Street, outside the New York Stock Exchange. We've met him here today at the Asia Society, and we are here today specifically to condemn the Asia Society for giving a fascist dictator a platform to speak, to continue giving him a platform to speak, to just forget about the fact that he and his family have completely revised history and said that martial law was the golden era of the Philippines. It was not. It was a time of terror and death. We've been out here to commemorate the 50th anniversary of martial law, to remember the martyrs that we've lost, the over 3,000 people that died under Marcos Sr., the 30,000 people that have died under Rodrigo Duterte, to remember the people that were illegally detained, the 70,000 people that were illegally detained. Please don't go in there today. Don't go in there today.
Shame on you! Come on! Shame on you! Now you come out. You don't want to go in there. You don't want to go in there.
There's a fascist in there. And we will continue as long as Marcos is in power, as long as this family continues to try to hold on to its power by lying, by cheating the Filipino people, by stealing from the Filipino people, by deceiving other governments, by deceiving the working class, the poor in the Philippines. We will be out here in the streets standing alongside them. That is going to conclude our program for the day. Thank you, everybody. Make some noise, especially make some noise for the team that was inside, that was thrown out by security. Our brave kasamas. Make some noise for yourselves for being out here. And make some noise for a week long of action against the Marcos regime. Thank you, everybody.